So this week it's Parshat Korah, and it's an amazing story. It's a very perplexing story. Everybody knows it, I'm sure, but just so that we're all on the same page. Korah challenges Moshe Rabbeinu that why does he take all the best jobs for the boys, meaning him and his brother, Aaron HaKodesh, and he says, I'm your cousin, which he is. He was Moshe Rabbeinu's cousin, and he says, how come we're left out of all of this? Who are you to point yourself over us? We're just as holy as you. Everybody's holy. We'll come back to that in a minute. And he challenges Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership, and it's the first recorded mutiny in our culture, and he took 250 good men and instituted this rebellion, which ended with the earth opening up and swallowing him up, and 250 men with it, and they were all consumed by fire. And the whole story is a Cecil B. DeMille horror movie, and he dies a terrible death. And the whole thing is a story of blood and fighting and stress, and the question is why. You have, if you understand the background of who Korah was, let's start with that. Korah was Moshe Rabbeinu's cousin. He was a man of enormous historical distinction in our tradition. He was a Talmud Chacham. He was he was a wonderful speaker. He was very dashing, attractive. Why? Sorry, guys. Can you find a chair down the bottom? Hello. So we're talking about Korah being a person of enormous power and persuasion. As I said, he was a Talmud Chacham. He was very rich. He was a scholar. He was a spiritual person, a person of very great influence. And the question is, how can it be that that he instituted a rebellion? And to make the question stronger, before we even get to that, his stated reason for the rebellion was that he wanted to serve God. So he wasn't saying, make me the Kohen. He said, I want to be Kohen Gadol. Aaron was the Kohen Gadol. Now, he didn't want it for the money. He didn't want it for the prestige. He didn't want it to be a movie star. He wanted it to serve Hashem. So if he wanted to serve Hashem, so what was so bad about wanting to serve Hashem that he should institute a mutiny which kills 250 of our best men? And there are more questions. Another question is this: we sit here in 2026. What's it got to do with us? What's Korah got to do with us? Are you seriously suggesting that grown men will sit round a table to learn Torah and to understand the greatest secrets of the universe, which is what Chabad Hasidus lets you into, and all of that is to do what? To learn a story which has no relevance to us. We have no Beis HaMikdash, we have no Kohanim that are practicing the Korbanos, we have no Kohen Gadol. So what's this got to do with you and me? And what was so terrible about Korah wanting to be Kohen Gadol anyway? It's not that he wanted to be a murderer. He didn't want to be a thief. He didn't want to be he didn't want to institute some kind of immoral rebellion. He wanted to be a Kohen Gadol and serve Hashem. What does the Kohen Gadol do? Of the Kohanim, so that everybody's on the same page, I'm sure most people know this anyway, the Kohen Gadol's job was to minister to Am Yisrael and actually come into direct, obvious connection with God. Once a year on Yom Kippur, he went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is the Holy of Holies, and there he had an experience, he experienced revealed godliness. You should know that it's understandable that people had envy of that at one level, because what could be better than having an experience of revealed godliness? It must be the most wonderful experience of anybody's lifetime. However, it's not so easy, because we have learning, which is that if the Kohen Gadol wasn't roy, if he wasn't fit to be a Kohen Gadol, in other words, if he wasn't free of sin, he died. So he went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The maximum time for a non-perfect Kohen Gadol was 1 year. Because let's say he was appointed on the first day after Yom Kippur, he only had 1 year to go. And let me ask you a question. If you are focused enough to want the job of being Kohen Gadol, and you satisfy all the superficial tests to be the Kohen Gadol, wouldn't you realize that you probably don't deserve to be a Kohen Gadol, and therefore you're going to die in a year? So what do you want the job for? Who needs that kind of pressure? And yet people were lining up and tried to bribe people, and the very person who's bribing is signing his death certificate. But Korah wasn't like that. Korah was the goods. He was a holy Jew. He was very learned. He was very powerful, very popular, very persuasive. And he wanted the job because he could do it. So the first question that we have with this week's Sedra in learning Hasidus, which is to learn the secrets of Torah and to understand the workings of yourself, is what has this got to do with you and me? And don't forget that you and me, each one of you and me, each one of us and each other is entirely different. We're entirely different universe, each one of us. We do this over and over again. Every one of us has a unique DNA. Every one of us has a unique spiritual DNA. Every one of us is born with a unique set of tests that they're going to go through. Each one of us has in order for Hashem to give us tests, he must give us the capacity to manage the tests, otherwise he's a sadist. So if we are tested, and if each of us have the resources to deal with that individually, each one of us is different. So much so that the Rebbe says that when a Jew is born, that is a testament to the fact that no other neshama in a guf could get this job done. That's why he's born. Otherwise, it's a waste of time and space. And Hashem's not wasting time and space. So what has it got to do with you and me that Korah, nearly 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago, messed up so badly that his rebellion and his sin is remembered by Jews 3,500 years later, and he's criticized so heavily. And he is. He's criticized. He is the worst level that a Jew can possibly be. From the highest level that a Jew could be to the worst level that a Jew could be. So what is it that makes that happen? That's what the Rebbe examines in this Sikha. Before we go further with that, before we go further with that, to understand what it is that is so problematic with him, the first step is probably obvious to the more experienced travellers, and I'm speaking especially to the people on the phone, on the recording, that when we're talking about a spiritual figure out in Torah, Torah is the wisdom of Hashem. The wisdom of Hashem is constant, everlasting. It applies to every Jew, and it applies to every Jew in every generation. So the stories in Torah, they happened as they did, but we don't read the Torah because it's a history book or it's a story book. We read it because it contains the deepest truths in the universe. So what is it about Korah that is so fascinating that we have to learn it every year and learn it so badly? And the answer is, you and I have a Korah in us. So we have to start with that. You have to start with understanding that just as there is Moshe Rabbeinu and a Moshe Rabbeinu in all of us, so too there is a Korah in all of us. And it is critical to one's personal flowering and fulfillment and satisfaction and happiness to understand when there are negative energies, how to deal with those negative energies. And if you don't address those negative energies, the sad news is that, and I'm talking now specifically for Jews, the sad news is that a Jew will live his 60, 70, 80, 120 years, and he hasn't lived a day. He's existed. He's eaten and he's drunk and he's fornicated and he's had power and he's had money and he's had gratification. Great. But that's existing. Animals do that. But to be a human being in general and a Jew in particular and reach fulfillment so that you feel, so that you jump out of bed in the morning looking forward to the challenges of the day, not because you're dodging bullets about money and success and this and that, but because you are dealing with your God on a personal one-to-one level, and you are fulfilling your mission in life. That's a different life. That's not existing, that's living. Huh? What? Don't be shy, Roman. So, and there is a very big and dangerous problem to this, and that is Korah. Korah is the signal danger to this issue that we're talking about. Why? Because just as Korah is convinced that his search for godliness is genuine and proper, so do we. And just as he justifies it, we're going to see on what basis he justifies it in a minute, so do we. And it's a very great personal danger. And to understand that danger, one has at least got an opportunity to deal with it. How totally depends on everybody's everybody's work, personal work. when you go to the spiritual gym and build spiritual muscle, just like you do with a body. You have a perfect body like this, you have to go to the gym. Like all of us, most of us anyway, most of us. But when we learn Torah together, and when we learn Torah properly, and particularly when we learn Chabad Hasidus, you have a gateway to living rather than existing. My first teacher used to say that you see in colour, not in black and white. And in those days, the televisions were black and white. I blush to tell you how long ago that was. But when first televisions came out in colour, it was just such a new experience to
75.
see. Huh?
75.
It was amazing to see the colour television. And it's a good mashal with learning Torah. You know, you can learn Torah at one level, then you join in Chabad Hasidus, and suddenly the Torah begins to be available in color. Okay. Now, we know, we've been through this many times, every Jew has a nefesh habahamis and a nefesh elokis. Everybody has an animal soul and a godly soul. And the godly soul that we have is the break and on the animal soul. The animal soul, we can't spend too long on this, the animal soul is not bad, it's not good, it just fulfills the energy of realizing one's physical needs, whatever they may be. The nefesh elokis, the godly soul, is the one which is the energy of kindness, of patience, of holiness. And we have a war between both of those. And one is, if you have any level of self-honesty, you will know that you have that war, and I have that war, every one of us has that war, to each person differently, each person to a different extent. But you have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to know that you have a physical life force. You know that. You don't know much about it, but you know you've got it. And you also, equally, you know that you have a godly soul as well. To what extent depends on how much you encourage the nourishment of that perspective. But that perspective is the one that we as Jews need to gravitate to and increase the focus on day by day, week by week, year by year, so that when you get to the edge of the grave at Rookwood, you've had a life rather than an existence. And I'm fond of saying this because it means a lot to me, so for what it's worth, I like to share it. I've been a lawyer for nearly 60 years. I've had a practice in Double Bay all of that time before we started the mortgage fund, and I've acted for a large percentage of rich eastern suburbs Jews in all those years. Why? Because I'm in Double Bay and Jews have done well, Baruch Hashem. And it's tragic that so many of them have become, when they get old, will say to me, I wish I'd been more religious. I wish I'd been more frum. And when I ask them why, they confess to, and it's heartbreaking to listen to it, they confess that the things that they've chased after, because they thought that was going to satisfy the ache, the spiritual ache that they had, whether it was money or power or influence or political clout or women, that they've got nothing in their hands. They've got nothing at all. And yet there are so many Jews who have been able to learn enough Torah that they suddenly do begin to see in increasing color, that they have real value, real preciousness, a real relationship with their wives and their children and their grandchildren. Because what they have is of value. So now the question is, when you and I function, who's speaking? Is it your animal soul or your godly soul? And the answer is it's both. The question is, what proportions do you have that dialogue in? And the question is, where is your focus? Now, obviously, somebody who's driven purely by his animal soul, some I don't want to say anything politically incorrect, but somebody who is a pleasure-seeking, self-gratifying, selfish, narcissistic person who thinks he's making himself happy all the time is actually fundamentally miserable. That's a reality. You may not know it, you may not agree with me, but I promise you that if you look into it enough, you'll see that is the case. Why? Because it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. What works, there are different pathways. Most of them are dead ends. Some of them look like they're main highways, and they're not. What works for a Jew is learning Torah and doing mitzvahs with a full heart, that you are developing a one-to-one relationship with your God. And in developing that one-to-one relationship with your God, you have to be completely, absolutely honest. And that takes years of work, because we've all got defense mechanisms. We've all got, I can't tell you how many people I've heard say things like, sure, we keep kosher, and we keep some part of Shabbos, and I sometimes put on film, and I've overheard somebody say, well, why not put on film every day? And I'm not that religious. And he believes that's an answer. And it's only an answer because he's lying to himself. He hasn't really answered the question of why he doesn't put on film every day. Is it a nuisance? It's a nuisance. Does it take up time? Yes, it does. Does it mean that you get to work a little bit later? It probably does. But if you think that you're going to make more money getting to work earlier, not putting on film, when Hashem is telling you to put on film as a Jew, then you don't get it. You're not even at step one. Because what gives you the money when you go to work is your relationship with your God. He's the one that provides the money. Money is a gashmias blood supply to the world. And the heart of that blood supply is Hashem. So how can you do less in order to gain more? It doesn't work. And that is the clipper, that is the virus of Korah, as we'll see. So l'chaim. Okay. I'm just going to explain a point of view of Korah's, which not everyone will understand, and if you don't, unfortunately, or fortunately for some, the Shia is only an hour and there isn't time to do all the backgrounds, but we need to go back a week to Parshat Shlach, where last week we learned the story of the Meraglim, of the spies. And I'll remind you that very quickly Moshe Rabbeinu was told by God that if he wanted to, he should send, men to spy out Eretz Canaan, which was to be converted to Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Canaan and Eretz Yisrael have exactly the same geographical boundaries. One is a spiritual state, that's Eretz Yisrael, and one is a physical state, that's Eretz Canaan. And you and I, our life story is made up of the stories of Torah, that you and I are born and we are imprisoned in our Mitzrayim, in our bondage in Egypt. That's the translation in English, which is very bad. The word Mitzrayim means bondage, means restriction. Thank you. And we have various restrictions as we grow up, and growth for a Jew is Yitzias Mitzrayim, is the escaping from those restrictions, and then we have a period of time where we grow spiritually to the point that we are now fit to enter Eretz Canaan and conquer it. What does that mean? Eretz Canaan is our goal land, the land where we're going. It's the promised land to us, but it's not a geographical promise, it's a spiritual promise. We go in to conquer Eretz Canaan in order to make out of it Eretz Yisrael. And when we talk about you and I going to our Eretz Yisrael, we're talking about going to this place or state of spiritual perfection. Now, in order to do that last week, we learned about the Meraglim. The Meraglim went into Eretz Canaan and spent 40 days and 40 nights going the length and breadth of it, and they came back with a report. There were 12 men, except for two of them, Kalev and Yeshua. They came back with a report that, guys, we've cased the joint. Believe us, we can't do it. It's too hard. God doesn't know what he's doing. The fact that God's sending us to this promised land, we can't manage in there. It's full of giants, it's full of power and money and glory, and we're little Yidden, we can't manage this. So for that, they cried all night, and Hashem was upset with them for that, and that's why we have Tisha B'Av. That we learned all of that last week. But what I remind you of, or for those who did learn it last week, there is the Chabad perspective on the Meraglim was that they were holy Jews. And it's not that they were bad, that they came back, that they had a bad report. But why did they have the bad report? We learned that they said, we've spent the last year in the Bamidbar, in the desert, and Hashem has provided for us like you can't believe. We've had the manna from heaven, we had everything we wanted was supplied to us. If we wanted water, it came out miraculously from the rock. If we wanted food, we had the mon, for quail came every day. We didn't have to do anything. We had to just go and pick it up, and it was there. At night, we had the pillar of fire to guide us, and during the day, we had the on a cover, the clouds of glory. Our clothes didn't get old, nothing got worn out, and what was our experience? We were learning Torah and davening to a revealed God. And we come to this land of Canaan, and what do we see? Tractors, farmers, butchers, garbage men, mortgages, cash flows. Well, you know, how can we? And we have a directive from God that we have to be a light to the nations, and we have to be holy. We have to be kodesh. How can we do? You can't do that. You can't be kodesh putting out your garbage. You can't be kodesh fighting with your neighbor about money. We want to go back into the Bamidbar, and we want to have this wonderful spiritual life. So we know that this is a terrific sin. It was the worst thing that they could do. What was their punishment? God gave them what they wanted. They got to stay in the Bamidbar for 40 years and 1 year for every day that they spent in, until the whole generation died out. What was Moshe's answer to the Meraglim when the Meraglim said that we couldn't be done? His answer to them was, we don't belong in the Bamidbar. We don't belong on top of a mountain, smoking whatever it is that makes us feel wonderful. We belong in Gashmis, in physicality. Our job is to make a dira b'taktonim, a dwelling place for Hashem, in the lowest of all possible worlds, which is the physical world. And how do we do that? By engaging in physicality. We've got to go to work, we've got to earn money, we've got to give tzedakah, we've got to eat certain foods and not other foods, we've got to marry and have children. Can't be like a Catholic priest that doesn't have normal sexual relations, but it's all right to bugger children. That's not our life. Our life is that you've got to engage in everything physical with boundaries and in holiness, in Kedusha. That's what real Kedusha is. That's what Moshe explained to the Meraglim and Am Yisrael. So now, what's Korach's argument? Korach's listening to this. He's a scholar. He's a man of great power and influence. And he says, you're right. We're all holy. Am Yisrael is all holy. We're all equipped to deal with the desert, with the towns, with the grass, with the tractors, with the farming, with all the physical problems that we have each and every day. We are all able to do that. Why? Because we're all holy. That's what you just explained. If we're all holy, we don't have to sit in the desert. We can go into the land of Israel and we can work it, because we all have in common. I'll just tell you a mashal from the Rebbe to help understand this point of view. Avraham Avinu, Abraham, gets a bracha from Hashem long before where we are in the Torah at the moment. And what was that bracha? That bracha was that he should be fruitful, and he would be more numerous. This is the lashon. This is the expression. He would be more numerous than the sand on the shore and the stars in the sky.
Yeah.
Right? And the Rebbe asks a fascinating question on this. Why do you need both? Everybody knows that there are more stars in the sky than sand on the shore. Right? At the moment, current physicists say that there are 400 billion galaxies. I don't understand what that means, but it's more than the sand on the shore, right? The grains of sand on the shore. So the Rebbe asks the question, if he's giving Avraham Avinu a bracha for Am Yisrael, for the rest of history, for the rest of creation, What does he need both of those examples for? He can just use the stars in the sky. Or if the sand was more, the sand, but it's not more. That's not the... So the Rebbe explains this, that for sand, that there are two dimensions that a Jew has to understand in terms of his consciousness. There is, the sand has its koyak, has its energy, has its beauty, has its use when it's all packed together. That's what, one grain of sand in your shoe is very irritating, but all the sand on the beautiful white sand on the beach in Hawaii is very pleasant to. So for sand to have value, it needs cohesion and being packed together. But each star, explains the Rebbe, shines with its own light, and each one is different. And you need both. You need a community of Am Yisrael to think in terms of Am Yisrael, to think what's good for the Jews, what's good for Israel at the moment. But at the same time, you have an absolute obligation to find your own light and shine. And shine for other people. Shine for your wife, shine for your children, shine for your neighbors, shine for your enemies. Very difficult. I want to tell you, I've been learning Torah now nearly 60 years, and nowhere have I ever seen, I'm ready to take a Sefer Torah and swear on this, nowhere have I ever seen that this journey is easy. It's not easy. But it's a view from the top of the mountain. It's a different life. It's not existence. So when Korah understood that all Am Yisrael is Kodesh, all of them are holy, he comes to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, well, what do you want? Why are you appointing yourselves? We're all holy. I want to be Kohen Gadol too. You know what Moshe Rabbeinu answers it? You'll see on Shabbat, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I would like to be Kohen Gadol also. I can't. Why not? Because that isn't his job. His job is to be Moshe Rabbeinu. Aaron's job is to be Kohen Gadol. Korach's job is to be Korach. Kremnizer's job is to be Kremnizer. Chaim Yankel's job is to be Chaim Yankel. That's your job. You tell me you want to improve, Gesundheit. But you don't want to be somebody else. And if you do want to be somebody else, that's just a trapdoor to disaster. And most people are like that. Most people will compare themselves, and they'll be jealous of this person and jealous of that person. If you think about jealousy, you're really saying that what that person has, I should have. That's a failure to understand the basic belief system that we have in Kabbalah. You wouldn't exist. The only, I say this often, but not often enough. There is a book called Derek Mitzvah Secha, written by the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was arguably one of the greatest of the geniuses of Chabad, although it's very difficult to, you can't talk about, the Rebbes were all geniuses. But in this book, he opens the door to the secrets of your relationship with your soul. And he explains that just as we know God exists, you know it in your heart, you know it in your bones, but you know nothing about God. So it is that you know you've got a soul in your body, and you know it's there, you have evidence of the fact that it's there, but you know nothing about it. Explains the Tzemach Tzedek in Derek Mitzvah Secha that the only reason, and this is the word that he uses, and I keep saying this over and over again, he doesn't say one of the reasons, doesn't say the main reason, he says, and his words are very particular and very exact in all his Maimorim, right? So he says the only reason that a neshama has a yerida into a guf, that a neshama comes down into a body, is for its challenges. That's the only reason you and I are born. And I'm not going to get your challenges, and you're not going to get my challenges. And the pathway for Korah is to be a good Korah, not to be an Aaron HaKohen, or a Moshe Rabbeinu, or a lavatory cleaner. His job is to be Korah. And when he rebels against Moshe, this is code for the fact that you have a dialogue with your God that goes wrong, that you're not understanding what your job is. Now, obviously, a person is going to, you can't do this now this is a lifetime of learning and focus and understanding, but obviously one of the first questions that you ask yourself, well, how do I know? How do I know what my challenges are? How do I know what my tests are? How do I know how to be a Korach and not a Kohen Gadol? And the answer is easy. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say easy, because nowhere does it say it's easy. But the answer is your life is your life. And we believe in Hashgacha Pratis, we believe in divine providence, we believe that Hashem is recreating the world every microsecond, and therefore he is controlling everything in the world, including what's happening to you at any moment of the day and night. And therefore what's happening to you is happening to you deliberately. Why? Because you've got a neshama that can answer those tests, otherwise you wouldn't be getting the tests. So the test that you're getting is your life, and it's not only is it stupid, it's purposeless to say, I wish it wasn't my life, I wish I had somebody else's life, because then you might as well be dead. Because the only reason you're alive is because of those tests, those challenges. So instead of wishing them away, one has to learn to embrace them and work with them and make them flower. So there's a question. Why do we daven every day? What if it's all so honky-dory and it's all so terrific, and my life is so terrific that I shouldn't want anything else but my life, and I get up in the morning and I salute my challenges for the day. Why do you daven? Your child is sick, God forbid. Your wife is sick, God forbid. You go to shul, you try and bribe God, you give tzedakah, and you daven. And you're asking God to make the child better. Why? If Hashem knows what he's doing and he's controlling everything, and it's Hashgacha Pratis, and it's your journey and it's your test, what are you davening for? Hashem knows better than you and I do. So the answer to that is that, and Menachem, you were worried about this last time, so I hope you've moved on, or we have to keep talking. But you have to understand this dynamic, that the Hashgacha Pratis, the divine providence that you and I get, is tailored by you and I. So if God, let's leave kids out of it and wives out of it. If you get sick, or if you or I get sick, or we are in pain, or we lose money, let's take an easy one. We lose money. Suddenly that you get a letter from the tax department that they redid your taxes, and what you've claimed has been struck down, and they're going back 5 years and fining you 200% of the tax. You're not happy. You're not saying, oh, Hashem, what a great test. I'm really enjoying this. This is fantastic. I'm going to work with this and make it into... you run to shul and you beg Hashem to fix this. You don't want this. So the answer to that is that what happens to you up until this moment, that's Hashgacha Pratis. How you react to it, that's entirely your choice. That's the rationale between Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence, and Bechira Chofshis, so free choice. What happens to you, you don't control. How you react to it, you do control. How much do you control it? 100%. Not 90%, 100%. Now I'll tell you a fascinating, difficult corollary to this. That when you exercise that freedom of choice and succeed in that challenge that you've just had, which is very painful, all of a sudden you create a new Hashgacha Pratis for yourself for the next moment in time, the next moment after that. In other words, you and I, unwittingly, are the architects of our own destiny. It's heavy stuff, but we are the architects of our own destiny. And you don't get to that by saying, oh no, God's done it to me again, just my luck, I wish I was Chaim Yankel. Chaim Yankel's doesn't have this problem. He can pay his taxes easily. He doesn't have a tax problem. I'm sitting next to him in shul or at the beach or the football or whatever it is your pleasure is, and I'm looking at him and he hasn't got a care in the world. He does, and I'm sitting here and I've got to find $500,000 in 28 days. Where am I supposed to get that from? And the answer is, depending on how you and I react to that pain, to understand that pain is also for the good. Gamza L'Tova, it's also for the good, it's also for our growth. It's too much for one share, but I'm just covering this quickly for completeness. The more you can work with that and understand that it's part of Hashem's plan for you and it's good for you, even though you don't understand it at the moment, the more you are the architect of what's going to happen to you tomorrow. And there are spiritual energies in the world which that you make. For example, just give you one quick example that people know, a lot of people know in this year already. One way to wealth, one way to a pathway to wealth is to give tzedakah. We have a promise from Hashem that the only mitzvah that we're allowed to test him on is tzedakah. If you give money in tzedakah, you get it back. Not in some nice other form, kisses from your wife or hugs from your grandchildren. You get it back in money. And we're allowed to test God in this and say, I'm giving $1,000 for tzedakah, and you have the right to check when during the year you got that $1,000 back. Now, those energies are created by your choice. So when you give the tzedakah, even though you've lost the money from the tax man, and you still give the tzedakah, for all you know, that may actually reverse the whole thing. I'm only giving you a crude example. What we're talking about is the fact that a Jew needs to understand that his Hashgacha Pratis is for his benefit, it's tailored for him, he's got the wherewithal to deal with it, otherwise Hashem wouldn't give it to him. If Hashem was giving it to him and he didn't have the wherewithal to deal with it, then Hashem is a sadist, which is an impossible situation. Or even worse, careless, or non-caring. That's not our belief system. So if that's the case, how can Korah want to be the Kohen Gadol? And how can you and I be Korah inside. And we are. How do we know we are? Because Torah is nitzchis, it's eternal. It applies to every Jew in every generation. We wouldn't be learning Korah if it didn't exist in you and me. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that I'm not suggesting that somebody has got to accept the pain and difficulties of his life without a struggle. Of course you have to have a struggle, because you're entitled to want to feel good. But the way to feel good for a Jew is to not be a Korach and want to be somebody else, or not be a Korach and want to have somebody else's glory or somebody else's privilege, but to find your own. To find your own and develop your own and understand that it's precious. And it's to be shared. That's what it means, that we have to be a light to the nations. It means that we have to, not to give speeches, but to lead by example. So
I have a few questions, if I may ask.
Sure.